Hello and welcome to today's Society of American Association Executives Lunch Learning Series. Today's session is Integration Celebration, the Automation Ecosystem. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Chief Marketing Officer for HIghRoad Solution, Suzanne Carowin. Suzanne, if you're ready to begin, the floor is all yours.
All right, thanks, James, and thanks, everyone, for joining us today. We are going to talk today about really our automation ecosystem and probably more importantly, why this has bubbled up to be such an important, I would dare say, probably the topic of 2016. So we're going to talk about integration and what that means overall to our ecosystems, but we're going to frame it up hopefully in an interesting way that we understand why we're at a critical inflection point within our association industry, and probably more importantly, what are others doing and what do we need to start asking, what are the critical questions we need to start asking internally so that we can fit within the movement of what's happening overall in kind of our, in the digital landscape as in the entire environment. So starting with that, we're going to start taking a journey, and really the rest of the ASAE webinars within this program for the rest of 2016 continue to build on this theme. Continue to give more and more examples as we see more organizations starting to progress through this journey. And as we start talking about that and I start painting the picture, I want you to remember one key fact, which is that most associations don't like to be the first mover. They like to see everybody else who's done that. And I will just let you know that even the leading edge associations, a lot of our clients, we're blessed enough to have them, that they're the leading edge cases of the entire market. They're now making this journey. So this is not going to be like, oh, let's just do exactly what so-and-so did, because we're all in it together, and it's something that we're going to talk about, again, I think for the rest of 2016. So I can't tell you here's the magic formula, but I can tell you this is more than a trend. This is actually an evolution that's taking place in our industry, and hopefully we can see it and bond together early, and we can start now in being able to make this progression in a way that we are best practices based and we can learn from each other. So let's talk about what are we talking about, Suzanne. Let's start with talking there. So as always, when you're trying to substantiate a fact that we started from a HIghRoad perspective as a chief marketing officer, one of my top things that I've been trained in and that I look for are trends and patterns and market inflections, and how do we know when to do what in the market, how do we know who to target, how do we know when the right timing is to introduce a product, how do we know when we kind of push, how do we know when we hold back and we stay steady. Those are some of the areas that a chief marketing officer has accountability for, along with lead generation and revenue generation and things of that nature. But when I first came to HIghRoad a couple of years ago, I started seeing some definite patterns, some definite signals saying that the association market is for sure starting to change, generationally, perhaps in leadership changes, but also more importantly that you're seeing the indicators that the buying patterns of the traditional members have changed, and that the open rates of emails, this is one of those indicators, had stagnated and started to decline. That you could see that the pressure was on the associations to start to differentiate more so, that they were kind of at a standstill. And we're talking now, 3-4 years ago. What I've seen, therefore, in the last couple of years is the beginning patterns of starting to say we have to, getting past the understanding we have to do something and getting into the doing it. So when I started to study this trend, we first started looking at, we put out a State of Digital Marketing and Associations report, and we undertook this big cohort study, which we continue today. So we started that in 2014. We did it in 2015. We have our survey open in 2016, the results of which will be shared at this year's ASAE annual meeting when we always release the new report. But where I'm going with that is that you always want to look for, can I substantiate these patterns? How much is this an industry trend? How does this align with other market factors in our overall economy, et cetera? And where can I find other data to either disavow, my perspective on it and what I think is a growing trend and I'm starting to see more and more data points for, or do I see data out there that's supporting this trend that I seem to be identifying and have continued to observe and now have the statistical data to back up to say we are for sure within a pattern of true transformation. So in doing that, one of the pieces that I pulled out, and I pulled out specifically for today, is just an easy-to-read article from Fortune magazine. It's written in a way that anybody can understand it. You don't need to be a marketing analyst. You don't need to be an economist. You don't need to be a financial analyst to understand it. It's just starting to point out some common trends that's starting to underpin, again, this evolution that we're in, and that has everything to do with our marketing and our technology ecosystems that are going to help us to get to the next level in kind of our business transformation. And so one of these pieces that I pulled out, and I made sure to put in the URL here for the article because I would recommend everybody read this one because it's just short and to the point. But the point is that there's a couple things we want to take out of here. One, look at the size of the number that this article says. It's saying 5 reasons marketing tech spending will reach $120 billion by 2025. And a couple of years ago, Gartner came out, and Gartner is not usually a analyst firm that most associations look at. But if you're in the for-profit world, if you're a technology company, Gartner is like one of your key sources. If Gartner says it or if Forrester says it, this is something that you need to listen to because they intently study these markets. In the association world, we don't have an analyst. We don't have like an analytical group of consulting firms or analysts who are industry analysts that necessarily study our market to be able to give us these types of indicators, which is one reason at HIghRoad we undertook to fund and support the State of Digital Marketing and Associations research report because we need it. We need to fill that gap. But the big thing that has come out from both Gartner a couple of years ago, they projected overall in the for-profit world that marketing departments will outspend their counterparts in the technology side of the house, right, significantly. So that we see a growing trend that the marketing groups need to have bigger budgets to support technology expenditure to enable them to be able to do their marketing work. That's a really critical take-home factor because we need to understand this is a critical underpinning factor of one of the keys of this kind of the elements, or I should say the foundations for why we're seeing this shift occur. The other piece I want to point out there is notice that they say marketing tech, okay? So we're now talking about a new category, if you will, of technology. This is new to the association space to an extent. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but we want to start getting familiar with this idea of marketing technology. I think of it as the last frontier in the association technology space that hasn't had probably the love and attention that the other kinds of areas have had, maybe the events department or the publications department or the membership, join online renewal kind of aspects. But the marketing tech functions, both the people and the actual instruments to be able to do that, that's something that is another big factor that's changing in our world. The other piece that I wanted to point out there is just the sheer number, 120 billion. Okay, so this is something, the association market we know is not in parity in terms of time sequence. Typically with the for-profit market, there tends to be a bit of a lag. But 120 billion by, let's say, the overall for-profit sector by 2025, well, that's still a chunk of change within the association world if we extrapolate that, to let's say by 2030. So something there is occurring because we know that from a historical standpoint that we will tend to adopt the new tools and techniques, a little bit afterwards from the for-profit market. That's what historically has been. We need to shrink that gap of that adoption period. But we do know that we're not off in our own complete bubble. We know that we still are dealing with the same consumers who go to Starbucks and buy from Dick's Sporting Goods and, go to Toys R Us and go, to the grocery store. These are the same humans that come to buy our certification products and come to renew and things like that. But where that gap is shifting between what's expected from a Starbucks experience and what's expected, let's say, from my association or society's experience. So a couple key points to say. Reasons that marketing tech is growing at an exponential rate. never before seen, right, in a very quick time period, right? Those are the kinds of pieces we need to pick out to say, what does this mean to us, the association? And it should start to beget more questions to say, are we prepared? Are we also undertaking this journey? Have we started to say we know we need to do something, and now we're at the table to say, okay, what do we need to do? This talk today is about starting to direct the what do we need to do piece of it. So let's talk about now why, this is a little bit later down in this article, I think this is such a key quote here. Why, we should ask, is marketing technology the thing to bubble to the top? Why is it going to, we are projecting it's going to be a $120 billion market by 2025? Why? And so from that, by the way, that projection at $120 billion is by the Foundation Capital here. And so his quote from their analyst is that there is an inflection point that is being driven by consumer behavior. The nature of the dialogue has been one way, but we're moving from dictation to conversation. And that right there is the crux of this entire movement, okay? So from an association standpoint, this should be riveting. Riveting. We should all stop what we're doing and say, let us stop focusing in on trying to cut and paste copy and get it into the email so we can hit the date that we were slotted 7 years ago, that we can send this out on Thursdays, because that's the only time slot we get to, and we only have 55 characters to put in our email. That's not the conversation, okay? That is called just, operations as they've always been. The conversation is that we need to be aware that there's an inflection point, and it's driven by consumer behavior. That's the inflection point, that something fundamentally has shifted, that our consumers now are not the consumers that received those emails that we did 5 years ago, the same way 5 years ago, right? That the consumers we're now dealing with are different, fundamentally different than how we've always done it. So if the person that we're trying to sell to, that we're trying to service, that we're trying to educate, has fundamentally changed, therefore it should be obvious that this is how we've always done it comes to a grinding halt because it becomes irrelevant. So the fact that historically we've done these things the way we've always done it, and we had some result and success, no longer is relevant because our target has shifted. Our target shifted, and therefore the disruptive effect all the way back, if you remember ASAE's technology conference back in December of 2015 was all about disruption. Why are we talking about disruption? Because the consumer moved on us. The consumer moved, and now it has disrupted all of our current organizational processes and structures and who we hired and how we compensated them and how we were, how we worked and the products and services and all the programs that we built around this consumer that more or less stayed the same for the last 20 years, they're now off. We have misalignments. It's disrupted because we're at this inflection point that's driven by that consumer. And we have many other talks where we talk about what's changed about the consumer, what's the modern consumer. I'll sum it up really easily. The modern consumer now can walk into Starbucks. They can buy their coffee off their phone. They can refill it, automatically from their other debit card. They can see their points tracking. They get emails that have coupons, and they're talking to their friends about it. That's in a nutshell. You think about the Starbucks experience. You think about getting on your airline experience, the buying a car experience. All of that, gives you, we fundamentally understand that because that's how we shop. But somehow, if we look at that and we say, well, then how does that look in comparison to the way our association does it, we see automatically, we know it's not quite up to where it should be, right? So the question, we've all gone through, I think for the most part, most associations know that they need to evolve. The question becomes, like we were saying, is what do you need to evolve and how do you attack it? So we want to talk about that for the remainder of our time together. But I think, again, this article is just so critical, and they've done such a great way of just sizing it up that, again, we have understood at this point in time in the association market that the consumer is in control, right, and that they have the buying power. right, and that they have the buying power, and that we as an association must shift position now to be in dialogue, in an interactive, constant experience with this particular member or registrant or donor, and that piece has to come across, again, online. So just to hammer home that point, let us talk about then a couple of seismic shifts in association management that's occurring, okay? And so again, here's the seismic shift based on just that article. So just to further elucidate that point, we have to embrace and be okay with and then start to say, do we understand this concept and are we designing from it? The fact that consumer behavior, as we said, inflection point surrounding consumer behavior, that in fact consumer is equivalent to member, registrant, subscriber, donor, etc. These are one and the same. That we have to adopt consumer behavior understanding and consumer behavior marketing. That's a key piece, because when you adopt consumer behavior marketing or consumer behavior understanding or product design or educational design, other factors come into place that maybe weren't driving forces previously. For example, user experience design, what it looks like, the aesthetics become absolutely critical to match the consumer viewpoint and eye and what's going to be seen as desirable with that particular consumer group, right? If we embrace the fact that the consumer is the same as a member, we understand inherently they have choice, they can vote with their feet, they may or may not buy from us, that there's lots of different options, and that we have to compete. We fundamentally understand that if we have adopted consumer behavior, and that our goal is to try to figure out how can we become the most attractive, the most top-of-mind brand to that consumer, so when the buying time is right for them, that we are, one, in their selection of choices, and that, two, they are going to be predisposed to buy from us and not the other guy, right? And then as we understand consumer behavior, we understand we're always in a competitive landscape. We're always in a resource-constrained environment, and what's going to drive our decision-making on product and service delivery is going to be based on revenue and how much did it cost us to produce that next unit, right? So at the end of the day, consumer behavior is very firmly rooted in the idea of being able to profit, being able to make margin, right? Now, how we report that in from a standpoint of, you know, our taxation and whatnot is different. But the fundamental idea that we should be designing products and services that are market aligned with the market, aligned with the consumer, and that create new revenue for us, right, is something that we have to embrace, because it also that has some other pieces, meaning like we have to measure. Hence why there's so much emphasis now on measurement, because measurement is fundamentally a piece of consumer-based marketing. If I would never just launch out a new soda product and have no idea if the flavor is going to work. It would never make sense for us to do that. That's why there's so much on the consumer, you know, product marketing side and whatnot. There's so much testing and product testing and, you know, being able to understand the market, because fundamentally we understand we're in a resource-constrained environment. Humans cost money, you know, production costs money, being able to distribute it costs money, promoting it costs money, and all of these are trying to come back to, do I have the right product mix? Do I have the right price? Do I have the right mix of promotions? Right? Have I put it correctly into the market? Okay, fundamental principles of consumer-based marketing. So we need to embrace that kind of piece. That's a seismic shift. Right there alone, we could spend, you know, many, many other sessions just talking about consumer behavior and consumer marketing and how that differs within, let's say, an association. For example, if I went into a for-profit company that created services and products, you would find that there is somebody called product marketing. There is a department, a very powerful, important department called product marketing. That is not a department that you regularly see within the typical association org chart, okay? So something there is, again, you're seeing some fundamental disruptions. If we embrace this kind of piece that the consumer is member, registrant, subscriber, donor, et cetera, we have to say, do we have the right alignment internally to support that? That's one of those big seismic shifts. Big question on the table, right, from an association management viewpoint. Secondly, as that article noted, we've got to embrace this concept of marketing and technology being together, right? And that term is actually called MarTech. That means that we need to be staffed by and we need to have the right tools to be able to undertake marketing technology, okay? That is, we need people that understand marketing methodologies that are modern digital consumer-based marketing methodologies, and they know how to do their work through technology. That's MarTech. Going back to my analyst example, think of it from this perspective. So I'm going to give you a personal perspective. My husband is an economist, okay? So in order for him, he studies the U.S. housing market. He's an expert in multifamily housing and mortgage-backed securities, being able to drive that, okay? That's his area of expertise. In order for him to do his work, to analyze the terabytes worth of data that's out there, he needs to use SaaS as a business intelligence product so that he can develop models and programs to be able to slice and dice the data to see what's happening with U.S. housing as a whole in the multifamily sector, okay? He is not a programmer. He's not a developer. He wouldn't come and say, oh, I have degrees in computer science. He can't build you anything from these types of things. But he can't do his job without using the most modern statistical software on the market to do that. He is inherently tied to using technology to do his data analysis, okay? This is no different than this marketing technology need that's now in associations, where you're starting to see that in order for us to proceed as a business, we must leverage technology, and it's got to be inherent within our organizational DNA that we're using technology to move forward our business, okay? So we no longer it can't be relegated to just one department or only one person knows how to use the email marketing system or whatnot. All of us need to understand how to employ technology to get the data we need to be able to make those decisions, okay? So it is incumbent on us that the leadership teams of associations now understand MarTech. They don't have to actually be the practitioner of it, but they need to understand fundamentally how all of these purchase decisions, these investments in technology fit together with the forward momentum of the actual association business itself. It's fundamentally important and requires now that we have that. Similarly, on the marketing side of the house, it is incumbent on the marketers to be data-driven, right? To understand fundamentally how to use all the tools out there in the market, and then to be asking and putting pressure on the organization to say, we need modern tools to do this, because we can't be trying to piece together, because ultimately, if the tool doesn't allow us to get the measurement and the metrics, the tool is not of any value anymore. That's a fundamental shift in the usefulness of applications. So we're talking about building up, again, this application ecosystem. But if the tools that I've been using no longer allow me to get to the comprehensive consumer profile, to get to that data points that I need to collect them all and aggregate them so I can read them, because, again, the marketer's fundamental job is to read the market, is to understand points of inflection, is to understand pricing, positioning, product placement. That's their job. Their job is not to push a promotional email, okay? Push a promotional email makes a ton of sense if they've been able to read the market. Right now, we're in a state where we're doing a ton of push of promotional email, not reading the market, of misalignment, okay? Because we didn't have the ability to read the market, but now we do. That's MarTech. So it's that evolution also on the marketing side. So this idea of MarTech, again, we could spend a whole series talking about this and the elements of it and how to staff correctly and how organizations are changing. As a matter of fact, we were just down with the Military Officers Association of America, one of our wonderful clients that we work with. They have just hired a data analyst. His job is to come in and put all this together and start doing what? Modeling. Start doing modeling. So we're seeing they tend to be on the leading edge. We're seeing that new jobs are being created to handle this MarTech role. He sits right between marketing and technology. His job is to build a behavioral data warehouse and start to be able to empower the the rest of the association with actually the models that will be able to tell them what products or services we should be able to push out. The third factor that's a real seismic shift in the ability to get to this ecosystem world, or like, why are we building the ecosystem? Because if we don't get this, we're never going to build it. It just sounds like an additive cost, and it's just vendors pushing it. The third is understanding fundamentally that that shopping experience has gone from the live, in-person, I didn't know my choices until I got in front of the aisle and I saw that there were 4 different types of milk, right? I didn't know ahead of time, shopping experience live in person, to one in which the modern shopping cart looks like this. The modern shopping cart is based on digital. The dialogue I'm going to have between the organizational association entity, that brand, and the consumer is going to happen and flow through digital devices, whether tablet or phone or desktop, and that purchase decision is going to happen over digital, okay? That is kind of the biggest piece. So even if they fundamentally still come to your live event, that decision process of what they're going to do is all happening through digital. And we have to therefore say, have we designed our properties, our websites, our social media, our email, our learning management systems, our online communities, our LinkedIn groups, all of it, has it all been designed right around, again, this consumer who's moved on us, right? Or have we designed these things kind of partially to handle a consumer who comes and ultimately does their transaction online, but maybe is still making the decision about us in other ways? Okay, so we fundamentally embraced that and done that. Is another piece of the seismic shift. And finally, the piece there is, why are we doing all this again? Why are we having the seismic shift? Because the piece of it is that we're trying to understand, the goal is understanding the journey. Why do we want to understand the buyer's journey from the digital point? Because we can measure it. Why do we want to do it? Because it's going to get us the competitive, or it's going to allow us to stay competitive and relevant in our marketplace and be able to serve this pesky consumer who's changed. So from that understanding of that buyer's journey, this is really what we're trying to do. So when we talk about building an ecosystem, it's really easy to go right down in the weeds right away and start saying, well, have you integrated email to your association management system? What about your website? Do you have single sign-on? What about your online community? Okay, all of that is irrelevant if we don't understand what we're trying to do. It's not about having what we call a checkbox integration. We're not talking about syncing list management. That's child's play in this world. We're talking about, do you have deep integrations that allows for easy data transfer between your different applications for one and one reason only, because you're trying to understand the buyer's journey. That's why you do it. That's why you integrate. So it's different now from saying, historically, I wanted to do an integration between systems for 2 reasons. One, I didn't want to have our end user on our website to have to log in multiple times, because their logins are hard, they forget their password, right? And we're trying to create a stress-free experience between them. That was the driving force for the last 10 years of why integrate. The second driving force for integration was to say that we need to save staff time. So the staff, let's take email marketing, the staff doesn't want to have to constantly export lists from my association management and upload lists into my email marketing system, and then find out who opted out, and then download that from email marketing and re-upload it into my association management system. And you can take that scenario and say, same thing for my event registration system. I don't want to have to export all the people that registered for the event and then import it back to my email system and then email those people, et cetera, right? Those were the 2 primary driving forces for integration in the last 10 to 15 years. That's not the driving force anymore. That's what we would consider checkbox integration. You have your little RFP list and you say, does it integrate? Check, right? And that's the level of integration you were talking about. The level of integration that clients now, or that our clients now are looking for, is about doing custom integrations that allow you, again, to get the answer to the buyer's journey. So I'm now trying to interconnect data so I can get the behavioral data out of the email marketing system, bring it back into my association management system, so I can look to understand how people are making decisions, where I should spend my money, what's working, what's not. Did that offer actually affect people? Did it result in them changing or making the buying step to either activate or make the purchase transaction? That's a wholly different reason, a wholly different way to think about integration. That's the integration celebration piece. Because finally we're focused in on trying to understand how to be a better business and using the data to do that. And from a marketing standpoint, from a marketer standpoint, marketers could care less where the data sits, okay? So like the technology people, we just want you to make it so. I don't care, but I want it all together. That's what the marketers will say. I want to understand for this particular user, from the first time they saw our banner ad out on our on our magazine website that promoted our conference, what happened? When they clicked on it, where did they go? Did they come back to our website? Where did they go then? What happened? What are all the steps that led up to them making the decision? Did it take 3 emails to do it? Did it take 1 email? In that email, what was the subject line? Was it the copy that we used, or was it the image that we used in the email? What about all the people who never respond to emails? Do they do something else? Okay, what can I do with these people? You see, this is the way marketers think. I'm not curious. I'm not even halfway interested where the data is stored. I just want it compiled and aggregated so that I can analyze it. So I can then slice and dice it and do my target market. So the reason that we have such now a push for deep integration, not a checkbox, check it off the list, not a 10-year-old integration, but a deep, meaningful integration between systems, is to free up the data and allow it to flow, to be put together in a way that's comprehensive, okay? And we'll talk about where people are now putting that data in just a minute. But the end goal is because I'm trying to understand the journey. And this, again, this is different. This is because we have a marketing department that has been empowered to say we've got to drive the organization forward, understanding tastes and preferences in this market, understanding which products and services are marketable and will get us uplift in revenue, or what we need to design and develop to be able to place that in there, and then understanding how we can make shifts in what we're doing to be able to affect the way that buyers make decisions. That's what we're trying to do here. That's a totally different conversation than I need to send an email. Okay, that's not the conversation on the table. And we're going to keep pushing that of why this is the case, because we're trying to compete. Remember, we need to compete. We got to have this type of level of conversation. So the journey experience that we're trying to understand are everything here. Look up if you're just listening, of looking what's on the screen. We are trying to understand what happened from the first touch, or the first impression that they had of us, all the way through to the purchase point, and maybe thereafter if we want to do retention. We're trying to understand what are the channels that worked. So is Twitter the one that got us the purchase ultimately? How many times? Was it Facebook? Was it YouTube? Was it email? Was it, we did a Google AdWords? Did we do a buying? Do we have a TV ad? What are the channels that worked? What are the influence variables? Can we break it down and say, oh, look, people that fell into this persona group are 10 times more likely to buy our conference in this period than something else? Like, wouldn't that be great if we could know that? We're trying to understand what are what's called the correlation coefficients that actually precede purchase. So if I had to narrow it down and I had to say, of the people that made this purchase in this time frame, can we look statistically to find out what is the actual variable that caused the purchase decision? Which one is statistically significant? That hit the tipping point where they said, boom, I'm breaking out the credit card and I'm going to put in my number to buy it. Now, we probably need a good data analyst with us to handle that, but that's or like a marketer who's really schooled in the harder science part, right? The more scientific part of marketing. But that's the type of analysis that for-profits do all the time. That's a common thing in the product marketing. Okay, which one did it, right? Because whatever's the one that hit the trigger for them to make the decision, well, my gosh, that's the one we want to do some more investment in because it worked, right? And ultimately, we're doing all that because we're trying to understand margin, distribution, and what is my return on investment for my marketing spend. Why? Because we want highest margin, right, with the most direct distribution, the most efficient and efficient distribution that got us to the purchase, and we want to keep spending money where we actually get purchases, not where we don't get purchases, right? So this is the antithesis of spray and pray. We want to get super targeted because again, we have We know we're in a competitive environment. We know we have limited resources, right? And we know that we're going to, all kind of consumers are not treated equally. We just want to focus in on the consumers that actually beget new purchases, right? And whatever you want to consider by purchase. It could be just attendance or participation in a volunteer perspective, but whatever that activity is that we're going to define it by. At the end of that, the reason we want to build up these integrated kind of ecosystems where the data can freely flow, and ultimately all of that data is constantly tied back to one individual, right? And we love, of course, digital in doing that because we can get so many touch points automatically and be able to use that and tie it back to one individual because it is digital and you have a footprint wherever you go. And the reason we want to do that is because we want to get to where consumer behavior kind of marketing-driven organizations are, which is getting predictive, right? And the goal is getting to a predictive analytical framework where we actually are able to do modeling. We're actually able to say, hey, look, so if we were to put out a new annual conference and we were to raise the price by $300, but change the variable of when we actually started marketing it to be like within a time frame that people are understanding, let's run it against our persona, called, Emily Event Manager, and find out how would that play, right? What do we think is going to happen from that? And we run those scenarios and these models to look at these hypothetical outcomes to help us make decisions. What kind of decisions and what kind of framework do we want? Well, as associations, we can understand this. We want to mitigate risk. We want to mitigate excess spend where we don't need to have it. We want to be able to mitigate product development risk. We don't want to create new products or services in a black box and unleash it on the market and have a I hope it works kind of method. Right? We should have already done these pieces. We should have that. We should have some probability. This is now marketing on probability, not on hope and prayer. Okay? So predictive analytics is, again, a statistically based type of method that's based on data. And the reason we want to get to this point now where we're undertaking this integration of our ecosystems is so we can get to this goal. Okay? We can get here and have a much better understanding about the operational efficiency of our association, and we have a much better understanding about how we're going to do product marketing, really at the essence. And again, to just kind of put it into a better looking way there, at the end of the day, we want to get to predictive analytics because we want to be able to develop products and services that feel at least custom tailored to the user, that are going to be able to add additional value to the user so they continue to buy from us, and then hopefully get in front of the user and create need for them that they didn't even know they had, but then we turned around and we actually remedied, okay? And we do that because today we're in a world of consumer behavior where what drives typically additional or new acquisition is word of mouth, and repeat purchase is completely dependent on the experience you had as a consumer. So if I delighted you, the probability of me doing a repeat purchase is much, much higher. And again, this is in a world where the consumer has the power of the Google, has the power of choice, has limited resources himself or herself. They have to make their own decisions about where to put their share of their wallet, and that you are competing to get as much of that share of wallet as possible. Okay? So all of that is kind of building up to us then having this discussion. Knowing all that, knowing that this is where we are, the fundamental, key, critical, milestone, rip the Band-Aid question is, does our organization have the ecosystem that's designed for understanding consumer behavior? If we look at our technology stack, right, or our MarTech capabilities right now, how do we stack up? Because this is what we have to design for. This is what I think the majority of associations are now gearing up to build that's going to service them for the next probably 10 years, right? So they're now building these things and putting this in motion based on everything that we've said. So to answer that question, let's do a couple of things. Let's check in with IT, right? So let's investigate this question of, does our organization have the right ecosystem designed for understanding consumer behavior, designed for market-facing, not staff-facing, right? Not to make it easy on the staff. This is not relevant anymore. Of course, we want it to be easy for the staff. But more importantly, is it designed to allow our staff to make forward-focused decisions? So let's break it down and look first at IT and first at marketing. So here's the typical association tech stack of most organizations that I walk into and I do consulting with when we do these kind of landscape audits and we're working with them to help move them forward. The typical association tech stack looks something along like this. So, and I've actually made the kind of the database sizes, usually in also proportion to the budget that it takes up overall from the association. These are kind of your big three expenditures. You typically have an association management system in place. So we're talking about, so in this case, let's say Aptify, what ASAE uses. So you've got a big association management system that has a large-scale investment that you've spent years and years and years populating with data that now we can unleash through, again, integration, right? So now it's like the AMSs are super hot again because all that work you did to make sure that data was structured and it was clean and you kept all your data integrity. Well, it's finally coming to a point where it's going to allow us to do so much more because of this idea of looking from a consumer behavior standpoint. As a matter of fact, I would argue associations are ahead of most for-profit industries because of how much data you do have about members, registrants, et cetera. So you've got that big piece. The second big investment is usually your content management system. So it's the big piece that governs your website, right? Big investment, et cetera. You know, you're looking at having a large-scale piece of software in there, et cetera. Next one is usually third in line is whatever you're using for email. Fourth is maybe if you have an additional event registration system, an EMS that's outside of your association management system, you might be able to just do everything within Aptify or whatnot. You have it within there. And then fourth, you might have, or maybe fifth, you might have peripheral systems like maybe you have HighRoad for your online community or have Socius for that, or you have other advocacy systems like Vocus or things like that. So you maybe have some other, CQ roll call, or you have some of these other kinds of pieces kind of around. But the big three are usually the association management system or your CRM tool, your CMS tool, your website tool, and your email marketing platform. So from a usage standpoint, this is typically how I like to look. So I will go in and I'll map out with you, okay, what is all the stuff that you have laying around? You'd be amazed at how much technology all of a sudden surfaces, and somebody's like, oh yeah, I actually work with Hootsuite. Did we mention that? And like all these little pieces of digital technology kind of surface, and you find out where all the data is. So from a usage perspective, if we look at how most people are shopping, the user journey is in green here, you can see that for most organizations it breaks down like this. Most organizations, the fact is they're starting from email and returning to the website to hopefully make a purchase decision. And the bottom part is showing where the data flow currently is. For most organizations, you have already done your checkbox integration between your email platform to your association management system, and you have your content management system connected to your association management system for single sign-on and whatnot. Okay? But the end goal here that I'm showing you is that for most of us, by and large, email right now is driving the user buying decision, buying journey. That's usually what's happening. That's why we email so much. It's why it's such a big ticket item, et cetera. But that we have kind of in this kind of factor noticed that this is a bit of a closed ecosystem, right? So we haven't really accounted for the growth portion. Like, where do we go get new people that we need to flow into our email marketing? Like, where do they come from? And how do we get new people to come into our website that we didn't already know, okay? This is a big problem that most associations are struggling with because it doesn't align anymore with this idea that the digital buying journey is happening outside of with people we don't know, and they're making decisions if they want us or not without our involvement. So we have to bust up this closed ecosystem. So right there, you can see we've got a problem. Already we have a problem, right? Already we don't have the right ecosystem in place. So what many associations have done over the years is they said, oh, when social media came out, oh, let's throw in some social media. That's shown here by these little purple guys. That's free and out there, and I'm going to use that as basically beacons to say we're trying to sell something, and I'm going to then use the URL and shake you back to my website in order for you to try to, buy this product, okay? That's somewhat helpful, but most of us haven't done a great job of saying, if social media is happening, how does it truly tie in with, let's say, email acquisition, so I can get them into my email marketing. We haven't really, a lot of times, thought through really social media campaigns or like actually understand what are the channels that actually make sense to us. We haven't really said, you know, most of us have done it scattershot and said, well, each new social channel that comes out there, we should be there and we have some presence. That's the typical kind of scenario. And we need to, again, evolve past that because, again, we only care about the buyer's journey that's going to lead to purchase or, you know, some activity that's desired. And this is why, because most of it's free, this is why most of us don't have a line item in our budget for digital advertising. Most of us are not up to speed on, you know, pixel conversion and retargeting ads. Most of us aren't using Google Tag Manager and looking at the entire digital journey because this has been our ecosystem. This is what's always worked. We added in social, maybe it got us something, but that's where we are. On the marketing side, let's check in with marketing. So we know, and this should be of no surprise, we look at these charts all the time. This is from our 2015 State of Digital Marketing and Associations report. We can see right here, if we're saying, again, answering the question, are we ready to look at consumer behavior? Well, we can see that in our portfolio, the number one thing we have are email newsletters. That's wonderful. We love email newsletters, right? But again, we just said email newsletters are good for people for whom I already have email addresses. So do we have systems in place to really understand how to acquire new email subscribers and what that means? And then more so, have we evolved our email newsletter to actually be able to fit with the modern consumer? Or are we just batch and blasting everyone, right? Are we still just being able to push out, et cetera? And we would argue, of course, no human on the face of the earth can be able to manually craft the type of emails that are needed in today's world. You got to rely on marketing technology to do it. It's got to be automated. Only technology can do that. Because that's what, remember we said, we showed the guy with the tuxedo? We're expecting custom tailored, we're expecting more value than I expected, and we're expecting to be delighted. The only way I can do that in email newsletters, which is still a number one way to market, is I got to use marketing automation to do that. So here's some of the pieces we see. Now, if we look way down in the marketing portfolio, you can see very down there at the bottom is LinkedIn, paid advertising, paid keywords, etc. Very low on the marketing portfolio. And that's because it hasn't been part of our traditional ecosystem and tactics of how we've gone about understanding consumers. But if we were in a consumer-focused organization, that would be at the top. Wouldn't that be interesting? If I was looking at a digital or budget rather for a marketing department in a consumer packaged goods, the number one spend is probably Google AdWords, right? Or at least digital advertising, digital placement. So that kind of begs the question, probably don't have the right aligned marketing budget. Let's look at our marketing tactics. So no surprise, number one marketing tactic used is email marketing and event marketing, followed by social media. Okay, so that already shows, again, maybe if I was really, really, really focused on consumers and growth strategies, I might see social media above email marketing, things like that, or at least I'd see content marketing. From a metric standpoint, these metrics that we're now using in today's state of, our today's associations, click-through rates, open rates, and page views are absolutely 10 years old plus. These are not the rates that we would want to see in a consumer behavior-oriented association, which is focused in on conversions, which is down here in the red arrow. You can see how far down that is. Because at the end of the day, an open rate of an email, a click-through, or you visited my website is awesome sauce, but it doesn't get me anything if you didn't take the desired action. What I want to know is, did you take the desired action of those people? What did we do? So the last kind of piece here, and of course, no surprise, if we look at our association marketing budget line items, it completely corresponds with everything we've been saying, which is our spend. Look at that. Number one spend up there is print. Right? Second is website design. Third is website kind of management. Email marketing comes in fourth. Then we have direct mail, then banner ads, and on we go. So we can see our association marketing budget is also probably not oriented to one in which we're trying to understand consumer behavior and be able to capture as many touch points so we can get proactive and go down that path towards predictive analytics. So the conclusion is it's time to evolve to digital. And in fact, there's a new name for this term now. It's been out a couple of years, but I think it's really hit the association market this year, and that is it is time for digital transformation. And digital transformation is really, again, more than buying new technology. And I just want, you've heard it from me first, you haven't heard before. Buying a new technology product nowadays is not going to get you what you need to do, okay? It's like just because you upgrade from your, Whirlpool stove to a Viking doesn't make you a better chef. You just got a better tool. You need to have great tools, don't get me wrong, but you need to have the rest, you need to bring in the chef too. That's where I'm going with that. So the digital transformation that we need to undertake is one in which we have deep understanding of the buyer and target market, right? So again, if there's a feature on a platform out there and say, we have personas and that's a feature, that's great, but if you don't have anybody on staff or you don't have a good consultant who can actually get you to the point of understanding and be able to do the data analysis needing for personas and develop that, again, I got a Viking stove and I still have a short order cook, okay? So we need the deep understanding of the buyer's journey. We need to also relook at our products and services. The best digital marketing in the world cannot help you if the webinar or the seminar that you're trying to market is a dog. If it's a dog and it needs to be sunsetted, the best marketing is not going to help, right? It's the lipstick on a pig thing. You're probably going to have to really look at it and assess it and say, do we need to sunset it? And obviously we want to do that to understand the metrics. So we need to re-evolve the association around the consumer. We need to then fit within the consumer's lifestyle, tastes, and preferences. So everything that we've talked about, and we need to have the right marketing and IT stack in order to be able to do that. That is where we're going to get to that integration celebration. Because remember what I said is that IT needs to help us connect all the pieces and get the data moving and the data aggregated so we can analyze it. And the marketing needs to come up with the questions we're asking and be able to get to the data so we can do the analysis. That's where we're going to become a consumer kind of behavior-focused association powerhouse. So having said that, let's recheck in with IT. So what would the IT side of the house look like in an association that has undergone digital transformation and that is situated now to be able to get that data together, aggregate it, get it over to marketing or have marketing work in tandem with them to be able to get to these points? What would that look like? So the new IT stack would look something like this. The applications out there that have been purchased and put in place from the fundamental understanding is they have to be connectivity oriented. API type of web services. I have to be able to transmit data back and forth fluidly, right, and with ease. I shouldn't have anything block the path of data to be able to be connected throughout, right? And then ultimately I'm trying to connect this data back to my individual, each individual person. So they need some unique identifiers on there, but I should be able to have something that across these different applications where the data is flowing, I'm always tying it back to one person, and that hopefully I have something like a kind of an overall taxonomy where I can piece this together. I need to have a comprehensive profile of my actual users. So I need to have everything interconnected. And again, like I said, not in a checkbox integration, in a really deep understanding where the behavioral data is being able to flow back and I can get to it easily so I can build out a comprehensive profile. This then begets the next piece, which is why so many associations now are saying, I need to now invest in, add on, go to a marketing automation platform. A platform that's been designed from the standpoint of collecting behavioral data about users through digital. That's why you're seeing so many organizations say, hey, I'm ready to add on or go to the next level. And associations do it in different ways. They might want to keep their current association technology stack, add on a Marketo or a HubSpot for lead gen, just a piece of it. Some of them want to move to it entirely. Some of the people want to add to it to just launch certain products, certain parts, departments. Whatever the case is, adding on platforms designed fundamentally to answer these consumer behavioral questions is something that we're seeing all of our, we're seeing the leading associations look for. The new IT stack also, again, goes past promotional, manually created emails to do what we do, which is intelligent contextual email, meaning they're hyper-personalized, automated marketing technology-driven emails that, again, is taking and mashing up content, preferences, topics, data points, geographic areas, persona information, mashing it all together, having business rules to run through it, and basically auto-creating an email that's designed for one unique user at a time, and it's sent out, and the association's not touching it. That's really critical to a modern IT stack, because like I said, we want the custom-tailored, perfect-fit tuxedo that's just for me, that makes me feel great and adds value to my life. Okay, we as association staff we can't do that ourselves manually anymore. We've got to rely on marketing technology for these pieces. We need to have a new IT stack that has website widgets on there that serve up content for us. Again, we need technology now that is fundamentally working while we sleep to serve digital users. We can't be there all the time. So this is like equivalent of thinking, how am I going to staff my phone system during certain hours? We need to be thinking, how are we beefing up our digital properties so that they can serve people when they come and go, that they can get the right information, et cetera. And we need these pieces to be like digital concierges so that they get that. The new IT stack is really focused on conversion tracking pixels. I need to be able to interconnect all of my digital properties so that I can pull back that data and understand the buyer's journey. A lot of organizations are moving to adopting in or adding in Google Tag Manager in addition to Google Analytics to do that. The new kind of modern organizations are adding on data warehousing or starting to really build behavioral warehouses and then put other kind of BI tools on top of it. Tableau is one in particular that we hear all the time. And then they're getting in good analytics tools like SPSS or SAS to do the analysis. Like our friends over at MOA, they may be also hiring a true data scientist to come in to help with analysis of that, because that might get outside of, again, where the IT team, they stop. They might be experts at database structure and administration, but they don't necessarily have the background in the social science of analysis. Let's recheck in with marketing now. What would the modern marketing kind of piece be? The modern marketing piece, as I had a consumer behavior-oriented culture, would be that they have on staff inbound methodologies and know-how, or at least they're ramping up and working with an organization to ramp up those capabilities. They would be ensconced in lead generation-based thinking. They would be bleeding data. Data-driven decision-making would be in the DNA. And also they would be very immersed in mobile-first design and understanding, and they would also have the right budget to allow them to get the technology and get these pieces integrated so that they can actually do the spend needed to be relevant to a consumer market in 2016. And I just wanted to say, oh, yes, I went there, because if you haven't looked up at your screen, look up now, because this is the type of marketing budget that is needed in a digital transformation world. 8 to 15% of revenue, okay? That's shocking to many an association executive, where they have been having maybe 2%, 1%. I've seen 0.05%, 4%. And that is because we're in digital transformation, not maintenance. We're in an investment time period. Remember, inflection point for consumer behavior, that number of $120 billion by 2025, no one expects to constantly have to send that over and over, but we understand fundamentally we got to dig deep, and this is investment in our future. We have been on maintenance budgets. We're now at a point where we have to invest. So to wrap it up, for those who are undertaking digital transformation, some just kind of pieces there. I've talked about a lot of new things where you might say, wow, we were just trying to get, we would have been happy with having our email sync to our association management system and not upload the list. That's okay, but many organizations are kind of taking this from a crawl, walk, run standpoint. Get a roadmap. It's transformation. I didn't say overnight, I didn't say it's not hocus pocus like overnight it's going to happen. It's a transformation. It's a journey. So we need to understand that there is help out there. We do this with organizations. Call us up. That these skill gaps exist within your teams. We're here to help plug in where you fit. And then also the big kind of takeaway would be use ASAE. Get ASAE to help you talk with, or call us up. We'll help you get connected with like-minded organizations who are undertaking this journey together. That's what we do at HIghRoad. We kind of bundle our clients together and we say, okay, you know, everybody seems to be asking the same questions. I've had 4 meetings this week on the same topic. Why don't we go ahead and get together with that one and talk? So those are kind of the key takeaways that I would say of undertaking digital transformation. And again, if you need help, that's what we're here for. That's how we work with ASAE, part of our endorsement. And I thank you so much for your time and attention today on this incredibly important topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. On behalf of ASAE, I would like to thank all of the attendees for joining us today. And of course, we'd like to thank Suzanne once again for her great presentation. Before you shut down today, we do ask that you please take a moment to fill out the brief survey that should be appearing on your screen now. ASAE does appreciate your feedback as it helps us improve future webinars. Again, thank you for joining. Have a wonderful day, and you may now disconnect.